Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Their Story Matters. And boy, do we have a story that matters today. You're listening here right on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and today we have Judge Carol Chumney. She has written a book very close to her heart about breaking that glass ceiling in the political arena. Yes, you can imagine it's not an easy ceiling to break. The book is called The Arena, the One-Woman Story. We're going to be talking about that book today, but also about her extensive life in the political arena. She's writing about her experiences in that political arena since in 1991. She gained an election to the Tennessee State Legislature. I can never get my tongue around that. At the age of 29, she passed the landmark childcare reform, as reported in Time magazine and the New York Times. And as a veteran state legislator and experienced trial attorney and Memphis City councilwoman, and in 2007 she became within 7 points of being elected of the first woman mayor of Memphis. 7 points. That had to hurt. Women are still not.
Please.
Yeah.
Yes.
7 more women could have got there. Yes. So she says women are still not predominantly represented in the US Congress, state legislature, statewide executive mayor positions in the United States. There has never been a female president in the USA, and it is about time we have one. So in 1920, American women secured the right to vote. And Tennessee was the 36th state necessary to ratify the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution. And the amendment passed by only one vote in the state. All these short votes, it just shows we've got to get out there and vote, folks. Despite the hundreds of years of women's suffragettes, there has never been a woman governor of the Tennessee. And the portraits of 46 men have served the mayor hanging up on the wall in Memphis City Hall. And to date, a female has never been elected. So it's time for change. We're going to be talking about the experiences of a woman in the political arena. And she's also addressing why things need to happen in order for the doors to open to higher office and for women, election reform and cultural shift away from gender bias. Do you hear that, folks? It's time to get a little more balance. Welcome to the show, love.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be on.
I mean, every time a woman is moving forward, there's a hand on her chest pushing her back. And it's always that a woman has got to prove herself 10 times more than what a man has to do. And goes back way, 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 way back to not the beginning of time, because women used to be revered. They were the wise ones. They had the common sense. They were also the warriors. And then, along came a shift where, the men kind of stepped in, ego and everything else, suppressing women. And basically, since then, a few thousand years, we have seen women suppressed. And it's really only been in the last, about a century, where women have kind of stepped up to even to have rights of being a woman, of being their own person, never mind actually working in any political arena. And it seems to be that fight is still going on, and it doesn't matter what arena you're in, does it?
No, and that's true. And I do talk about, because the reason my book is called The Arena One Woman Story is because, all the women really go through this at some point in their life. And it's interesting you talked about the beginning of time, because I do mention in the book, in the Bible, for those who are Jewish or Christian, wisdom is feminine.
Yes.
So in Psalms and Proverbs and everything, so wisdom is feminine. So that tells you something.
Yes.
That women, have had respect in the past,
Mm.
and at this point, but it's just like we have to fight so hard to earn it, and to fight our way in. You just can't. It's incredible, really, today that we're still having that experience.
Exactly. And of course, this is called Self-Discovery Wisdom Podcast Network, right? Because it
Right.
is
Yeah.
about, women will tap into the wisdom a lot quicker because we'll open up those channels to faith, source, energy, what anybody wants to, and we will allow it to come through us and resonate with the heart and get into our spirit of action and allow our mind to know what it needs to know when it needs to know it and not dictate with the ego. And yet, most men are driven by that need to prove themselves or by the ego, by the self-importance. Now, there is an
Mhm.
importance of self, which means you're investing in your own well-beingness. But self-importance is driven by an ego that feels lack, that feels less
Mhm.
than. And you get so
Mhm.
many people, especially entering arenas that are high focused because they feel if they achieve that, they've proved
Mhm.
themselves. Look how valuable I am, and
Mhm.
I'm something and all
Status.
that, and a bag of chips. You know.
Yeah, it's status. And
Yeah.
it's funny, it took me years and years and years and years. And even I didn't really think about it, so realize it till maybe a few years ago. So much of the world resolves around status. And,
Yes.
do you have this position? Do you have that position? Are you have this much money or that much money or whatever? And if you don't, then, people think you're not as important.
Exactly. And of course, now the big word influence. Right?
Hmm.
What influence do you have? And lobbyists backing people because of their influence. They're going to work for the lobbyists now. They're going to work for the companies that they represent. And I think somewhere along the line, they've forgotten they're working for the people or the
Hmm.
people, not just the special few. And it's really kind of gone into, and we've certainly seen this in the last few years with a past president, that it was all about the opulence and the
Hmm.
entitlement, and really
Hmm.
to hell with anyone else. And that all the
Hmm.
strings pulled on people, kind of saying to them, your rights, your this and that, was just a manipulation. And there was never going to be any dealing on promises unless it served the elite first. And we cannot have a society of such extreme opposites. We've always had it, but look then what's gone wrong. War after war, famine. Now, of course, climate change and suppression
Hmm.
and the violence and anger is proven to us at the hand of just man. And I'm not anti-men, folks, so don't go there. Is I'm anti the inequality, right? Of
Hmm.
the inequality, the lack of balance, and where we have seen repeatedly at the hands of man through history of time how resolution is done by violence,
Hmm.
right? And with
Yeah.
women, we look at it a different way.
Yeah, well, values, it all goes back to values and integrity. And one thing I do talk about in my book, The Arena One Woman Story, is about integrity in politics.
Yes.
And of course, now as a judge, I'm nonpartisan. Now, I'm not of either party because
Mhm. You have to be neutral.
that's just, I'm
Yeah.
neutral.
Yeah.
But, truthfully, I've been disappointed in both parties in
Yeah.
America lately
Yeah.
because, and part of that is because, we don't seem to be able to get anything done.
No,
And people are, yeah.
I'm going to fight you just out of spite. Never mind, it's a good platform to put forward, right? And
Mhm.
it's the
Yeah,
battle again of egos.
right. Yeah, and power and the quest for
Yeah.
power, and then we see that in the international politics. With we have some dictators in some countries, and then we have the nuclear threat, and some of these people. I mean, it's just like, hey, someday you're going to die. I mean, and it's just like we all do, and and you're just sort of thinking, hey, what is this? Is this all your life is going to be
Yeah.
about? Is
Yeah.
you being the number one guy, and that's it, the end all be all for you, or how about other people, caring about other people? So,
But we've got to actually understand that, people that are dictators are narcissistic psychopaths,
mhm,
right? They're, it is all about them and their power and they really don't care who pays the price.
Mhm.
Right. As
Right.
long as
Yeah.
people are still revering them and they're in power and they're calling the shots, it's all about
Right.
me, myself, and I. Right.
Right.
And if other people are suffering because of that, they just don't see it. Right.
They
You
get really.
worship me, don't you? Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
begging you for food. I'm begging you for shelter. But
Mhm.
you worship me, don't you? And it's you have no reasoning or rational with any of those type of people. You can't reason with them. You simply can't.
And I feel sorry for some of the people that live in those places where they're afraid to even express
Mhm.
themselves and say what they think because there could be severe punishment. And some of those people in some of those places are hungry and
Yes.
starving, and still they can't say anything. And
Right.
I feel very sorry for them.
And it's always the people that are the struggling the most. You know, the poor people trying to put food on the table and a roof over their head and protect their families are the always ones that are considered the disposable to these
Hmm.
people. And,
Yeah.
you know, you can understand why there is an uprising in America of people saying you've left us behind. But
Hmm.
they don't recognize that they're still being sold a bill of goods and that
Hmm.
nothing is really being done for them. It's just, you know, it's just rallying talk to get them riled up.
Well,
And
people do get manipulated.
oh,
Yeah.
easily, very, very
Hmm.
easily. And you know that we have to, as human beings and as individuals, we have to take some responsibility of A, what we believe in, and what research have we actually done on it before we carte blanche believe in it.
That's true. Because, I was even thinking about, it's funny you said that, like today, and I was thinking, wow, glad I've worked on some of these things, so when, I don't know how long I'll live, but so at least I can look back and feel like I tried, or,
Yes,
I was able to do something. I can't imagine there are people that don't really do much, and they just try to just live their lives, and they don't really do anything for anybody else. And I would imagine maybe at the end of her life they might look back and feel bad about it. So
Um, I think some of those people are beyond feeling bad about anything. You know,
yeah.
they're just on
uh,
another planet all of their own. But I think the
yeah.
followers, the people that have blindly followed, you know, when it comes into question, um, of, well, what did you do about it? You know, because it seems to be that people, when they get angry or get frustrated, and as a judge, you will see this, people turn to violence because that's
Mhm.
all they know, and that's where the frustration is because nobody's listening. Nobody's
Yeah.
listening to them, and there's so much diffusing that we could deal with if we stopped and listened and looked what the root cause is. And
Yeah.
instead, it's, you know, your reaction was bad. We're going to punish the reaction. That means you along with it, instead of looking at
Right.
the why. And I think that is, in many, many ways, North America especially has become a throwaway society. And we've
Mm.
just thrown people away left, right, and center. And
Mm.
a lot of money and influence is going on influence and not
Mhm.
going and trickle down to the people. And I'm sure you've seen this in your career where, you know, if it's generally the people that are struggling the most that get into trouble the most because they
You
feel
have
left
to
behind.
there needs to be a balance
Yeah.
of power, and it can't be all one or the other. And then when you lose that balance of power, then yeah, one side, or there are many sides and
Yes.
many different layers, and a lot of it is economic
Yes.
because uh a lot of times people say, is it this or is it that, and people do use race as a wedge,
Mm.
but at the end of the day, a lot of times it's just about money,
Yes.
and who has how much, and
Mm.
it's almost a little bit strange, because it's just like, how much do you really need?
Exactly.
How much do you really need? Enough to eat, enough to have your clothes, enough to be able to drive somewhere. In today's world we have to drive, but
Yeah, to sustain
yeah.
sustain one's life in a way that you can find your happiness in another way. But that then
Hmm.
comes back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of, you know, the influence that when we, you know, like the internet is a wonderful gift. We couldn't be doing this right now without it. But as with everything, there is a responsibility. So, like social media, a wonderful way to bridge the gap with people around the world, to bring the people from around the world together, to share ideas, share solutions, share fun pictures, whatever it is. But as per usual, there's always the negative side. Some would call it the evil side, the negative side, that it's their agenda is to capitalize as much as they can on any suffering or on anyone else. This is why we see so many scams and everything else. And this is why we see so much fake news. And
Yeah.
it stirs people up in the wrong direction. And this is where I think we have to kind of pinch of salt with a lot that we see.
Hmm.
And okay, where is the real source that we can go look for this fact check? And it's getting
That's
harder and
important.
harder, with
It is.
technology as it is. Where do you go to the resource? And so we become a little bit jaded and like, should I believe anything? And that
Well,
makes
yeah.
it a little
Well,
difficult.
the news used to be a lot. I guess I'll date myself, but the news used to be a little, I thought, less biased. And the
Yes.
news today, and I do watch all the stations because I wanted, and I do that because all the networks, I want to try to get a flavor of the
Mm.
news. But it's always bothered me how there's just this spin depending on
Sensationalism. Yeah.
which one you watch,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's this is all bad or this is all good. And I'm like, I just really want the news. I'll figure it out for myself. After you
Exactly.
tell me what the news is, I'll figure it out. But that's not the way it works today.
There's a
So,
great series that came out in 2010 called The Newsroom. And it
mhm,
was a three-part series. Jeff, is it not Bridges? I can't remember his name. Anyway, it
mhm,
was actually as he was a news reporter. He would talk about the news, but it was at the time when things were changing, where people were getting sponsored by organizations, and the
mhm.
organizations starting to dictate what could be said and not said. All right. And
Ooh,
so it is that kind of change of when we used to look
mhm,
at the Dan Rathers and everything else and go, the integrity of that newsman and the news that they were putting
mhm.
out, you could trust in. Now you're looking
Yeah,
at it, especially if you're looking at
Walter Cronkite,
right,
or yeah,
exactly. And you look at Fox News now, and they're sensationalists.
mhm.
They're purely sensationalists. I call it they'll take a pimple and make it into a volcanic eruption.
It's really all the stations. A lot of them are that way, and I and I kind of, it's impressive, but it actually becomes more of acting
Yeah.
than news.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. It's
Mhm.
not something that
Yeah.
you really can go to anymore. I actually have gone to comedians. I used to go to Trevor Noah from The Daily Show and Colbert because they would
Mhm.
deliver what was going on, but in a way with a touch of humor, which you could actually digest it. Because you
Right.
look at some of the stuff and it's like, are you kidding me? Are you
Mhm.
really kidding me? And it's like, where is the common sense? When you look at
Mhm.
politics today, and I'm sure as a woman, you look at it and go, but where is the rational thinking and where is the common sense?
That was one of the things I found so hard when I was, especially on the city council in Memphis. I served 4 years there before I ran for mayor, and they some of the people would call me the voice of reason
Mm,
because I just couldn't sit there and not say anything when something was happening that made no sense. And so I was elected, I felt, to speak the truth to power. And so some of the other members got really mad at me
yeah,
because,
yeah.
they'd be like, yeah, we should keep this 12-year pension. They had passed before I got on there, just before, a 12-year pension. They could serve 12 years and retire with a full pension regardless of their age. And I led the fight to repeal that when it
Right.
became public. And some of them just hated me for it because they're like, just be quiet, you'll get one eventually. And I'm
Yeah,
just like, no,
exactly. They
nobody
want you
else
to,
gets one.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
20 years, people put in 20 years of work. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a, if, I
Yeah.
mean, they keep pushing back the retirement thing to, 65, 70, soon it's going to be 90, before you can
No, just
retire.
keep
And
working.
yet they've got a 12-year one then, which is, again, as a politician, in whatever arena you're in, you have to look at all the ingredients, don't you? You've got to look at the economics, you've got to look at the environmental needs, the
Mhm.
infrastructure, you've got to
Oh,
look at,
yes.
the medical, oh God, medical, don't get started with medical
Mhm.
in the States, which is just outrageous.
It's really hard. Yeah.
How many
Mhm.
people die because they can't afford the medical treatment in a
Right.
world that's considered free world,
Mhm.
right? And people
Yeah.
become prisoner to their medical condition,
Yeah,
right?
it really makes a difference.
It
I mean,
does.
whether your medical care, I mean, because I've had some family member in the hospital recently, and I was just like, she had insurance, and she had me there some at night helping her, but some people don't have anybody,
No,
and they don't have the resources, and it does make a difference in the outcome
it
of your
does. And
health.
again, there ago, we're throwing away people. We're saying if you can't
Hmm.
afford your health, then just die. Because that's bottom line
Yeah.
of what it's saying. We don't
Hmm.
care about you. We don't care about our people. We're not going to invest in your well-being. Where if they
Hmm.
invested in their health, proper health care, but also preventional health care, you
Yeah.
would have a healthy society, mind, body, heart, and soul, that could be more productive. So therefore,
Hmm.
less violence, less poverty, less lack. Because where
Hmm.
does all the negativity come from? It comes from a place of lack, and
Yeah.
you would see that country pick itself up and be abundant again, but not when
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
not when you're leaving people behind.
Right. Yeah, and we've noticed that here in Memphis and I'm sure I know Chattanooga's had trouble too, in other parts, but where our young people, I guess COVID was part of it,
Yeah,
and we've had just some really high crime now,
yeah,
and a lot of young people, you know, not completing school, and getting in the wrong direction,
yes.
and it's obviously there weren't enough investments made in them. So
No, no, and we've had it here. I'm in BC, Canada, and we had a slew of teenage stabbings, random stabbings, just people in the wrong place at the wrong time, just for the thrill
yeah.
of it. And yet,
Oh my gosh.
how much can you blame on COVID? Because
Yeah, that's true.
you look at the generations that have gone through wars, four and a
Right.
half years of wars, never know if they're going to be bombed or if they're going to be
Hmm.
around tomorrow. But they
Hmm.
rallied together. Everybody came
Yeah.
together to support one another. And they went through that for 4.5 years. Now, did it leave scars? Did it leave post-traumatic stress? Yes. But again, the community was there for each other. So
Hmm.
COVID may have separated us for a little while, isolating
Hmm.
us, but it was a short period when you think about it. Then we had to
Yeah.
take precautions to get back out there. How much can we blame on COVID?
Well, that's a good point. I mean,
Or
I
did it
think
really bring to
it's
the surface what's really wrong?
there's a lack of investment, and it's very fortunate because I really think some of these young people, but you have to get them really young, I think,
Mm,
not just wait till it's almost when they get to be 13 or 14, it's almost too late. I'm not
yeah,
saying you shouldn't invest in, but
yeah.
the sooner you do, the better, in terms of getting them to start thinking about their lives, what they might could do, giving them
A sense
a
of
different
purpose,
vision.
a sense of
Yeah.
purpose
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
respect. I think, one of the things that we're seeing kind of a lack of, we're seeing
Hmm.
a great deal of entitlement.
Yeah.
Because the internet is all telling them they're entitled, and we're not
Right.
seeing respect of generations or even of themselves. And they don't
That's
seem to
true.
have a meaningful purpose. And without that meaningful purpose, because we're all here paying rent on this planet. And so we're all here to
Mhm.
contribute. And if they
Right.
feel they're entitled to everything and they don't need to contribute, and they don't have respect for self or respect for anyone else, then they're going to get bored and angst and feel lack of and
Mhm.
start committing the crimes.
Yeah, it's really bad, and the car theft is really, really, really bad right now.
Yes,
So it's
yes,
almost you're afraid to go in the store to get your
right.
groceries because you're just like, will my car be there when I come out? I don't really know.
Well, then,
Yeah.
then of course you've got school violence and everything else. And if there's only
Mhm.
so much you can go, oh, the person had mental disorder. Well, why were you not there when it
Mhm.
started showing itself and helping that
Oh,
person
there's a
instead of
total lack on that in that
and
area.
yeah, yeah, oh, massive amount of like.
Mhm.
I've got a book series coming out, an anthology called Our Forgotten Children, and it is about that. It is that each person is
Oh.
contributing a chapter, and it's from school teachers or nurses or people that work with kids with autism or um, foster children or whatever, and it is
Mhm.
bringing about the problem and what we can do about it, and what we need to do
Mhm.
about is radical change, and
Uh,
uh, and I think that there's so much, as you're having to be neutral politically, as
mhm.
a judge, I think that we need to also look at neutral when it comes to religion. Religion is your personal choice, your personal
Yeah.
arena. And I think we need to take it out of politics and somebody else's
Mhm.
agenda because you have
Mhm.
too many different types of religions out there and you can't have one dictating.
Mhm.
This is
Yeah.
repeating history over thousands of years. Are we not
Yeah.
over that by now?
Well, and of course, in America, I mean, our country was founded on the idea of independence and
Hmm.
democracy and
What
letting
happened?
different people, yeah, yeah, well, letting different people have different,
Yes.
values, but having a common
Yeah.
sense of,
Yeah. A common common
yeah,
denominator. Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So, mhm. But
So
anyway,
you've got a woman in politics like yourself, speaking out to rationality and logics and common sense, pull up the sleeves type
mhm,
approach. And
right.
then you've got, I can almost feel the vision of you're standing there, rolling up your sleeves, and this is what we can do. And everybody around you, like little boys, go, I don't want to do that.
Mhm. It was
Does it
really,
feel like that?
it was really, I was pretty much shocked because, and I write about this in my book, when I was growing up, my parents were great. And one of the things was they never told me I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So me, I thought I could do anything,
And you
and
can.
I was,
You can.
I did good in school. And I was like, okay, so I can be the mayor, I can be this, I
Yes.
can be that. And then I start, I did a great job at the political jobs I had in the state house and on the city council. People really liked the jobs I did. I got reelected over and over again. But then all of a sudden, when I'm running for mayor, all of a sudden it becomes no, and it kind of, but I think part of it was being a woman, and part of it was being somewhat independent minded and wanting
Yeah,
to do what's best over for the people as opposed to what any one particular group or individual wanted me to
exactly.
do. I
And
wasn't going
quite
to
honestly,
sell
as
out.
it should be.
Yeah.
Again, if
Yeah.
you're aligned with any one group, it's their agenda. It's not the
Right.
people's agenda. So when you
That's
have
right.
somebody that steps into it neutrally, right, then it
Hmm.
is it is a question of this is for the people, what's best for the people, and
Yeah.
whatever side brings to the table, it doesn't serve the people. But when you have
Right.
people protecting, I mean, what are they protecting? I know in certain amount of politics and certain levels that they're that politician for life and they get, I don't know, retirement or get something, but they're protecting their seat, they're protecting their power.
Right.
And
Yes.
I remember when Obama was in and there was a big thing being shown, and it was around the health. And you had
Yeah.
Democrats and you had Republicans, and they were bringing up health thing, and they were looking at eyes, and all of the Republicans just sat on their hands. And I thought,
Mm.
this is something that serves the people of America. The
Yeah.
people of America, whom you as Republicans are meant to represent, but out of spite because you don't like Obama for some reason or other, black, white, polka dot, who cares what their hate was, that you're going
Hmm.
to spite the people of America for your own agenda.
And that happens. I mean, over and over again. I remember when I was first elected to the state house, and we I got sworn in, and I planned this little party in the legislative plaza because it was a big deal, and I had
Yes.
friends coming up, and so I planned this little party, and that at that point, of course, I was a Democrat, and the Republicans decided to have a filibuster to
Uh,
protest, and so I missed the whole
protest
party.
what? Your
Everybody
party?
got to
Oh,
everybody got to go to my party for me. It
oh
was just
God.
I can't even remember what they were protesting, but anyway,
Uh,
everybody got to go to the party for me. But that was just kind of it didn't happen that much though when we were early on. It's gotten really worse now. It didn't used to be as bad, but as I recall. So
but I mean, what I want to understand is how can they back up and validate either their protest or their agenda? Because
mhm.
they stand by it, even when they have to know it's wrong.
Oh, and that's something that yeah, because when I was first elected also to the state house, and I mentioned this in the book, my attitude was it was such a big deal for me to win that election, and it was hard to win. And my attitude was, it's a 2-year term. I'm going to do what I promised. I'm going to try to fulfill the promises I made, even if I'm a one-term
Mm,
legislator. And I always took my job that way. And so when you do it that way, you get more done,
yeah.
and and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And if you don't win re-election, so be it. But I think a lot of people do get in there, and they have this saying, well, if you're a freshman legislator, you're supposed to be seen and not heard. Just sit there
Mm.
and don't do anything for 2 years. to get reelected. I didn't do that. And they even wrote a story in the newspaper about how I'd passed more bills, than any other freshman. And I was,
Good for you.
challenging other people's bills and amending, the governor's bill and doing all this stuff. And I was like, that's why I'm here. What
And
do you
that's what you're
mean?
here for. And this whole thing,
Yeah.
like back in the day, if a woman protested, oh, she's suffering from hysteria, lock her up. And then so many
Yeah.
people got rid of
Uh,
their wives that way. Hysteria, lock her up. And
yeah.
you've still got, men that will really kind of belittle women, by bringing
Oh,
up either hysteria or bringing it must be that time of month, because I heard that was apparently said in one of the things. And it's interesting because when they stoop so low, it isn't a
mhm.
reflection on you whom they're attacking. It's a reflection on themselves. And when you see so many of them backing each other up, yeah, 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 then what does that say about them? Yet they don't seem to see that.
Well, that's one of the things, when I was just first elected too, they used to send these little anonymous notes, and I'd be on the House. There were 99 of the House members. I was one of 13 women out of the 99, and they'd send these little anonymous notes, and they were kind of jokes. But then one day I got a condom in a little anonymous note.
Oh my
That
God.
wasn't actually. It was kind of scary. But I didn't make a stink about it. I didn't really do anything about it, because if
You
you
took the
do,
higher road. Hmm.
if you stand up and say something, then you're, creating drama.
Right.
And, so it's very difficult. Those kinds of situations are very difficult to navigate as a woman, as one of the few women. But we don't have the leeway as much as some of the men, I will say, to share some emotions,
Yeah.
because I even I think I left in the book. I can't remember, but anyway, I saw the guys cry over and over again on the House floor, like a legislator would be retiring, and
Yeah.
they get up there and talk about him and cry. But I never did that, because I knew I couldn't get away with it. I mean, if I
But
was
then
crying,
then you
yeah,
get the other side of it. Oh, you're a cold bitch because you don't
yeah,
show any
maybe
emotion.
so.
So it doesn't matter. You're damned if you do or if you don't, right?
It is. That's one of the really hard things, because if you raise gender bias, and I do talk about that in the book, if you raise gender bias, sometimes it becomes a negative because
Mm.
it's a turnoff for some, potential voters. But then if you don't raise it, then they get these subtle messages that can influence them, and they don't
Yeah.
even realize they're being influenced that way. So it kind of is a catch-22.
So,
Yeah.
raising, you're busy doing your job and you're, bringing about all these changes that need to happen. But at the same time, you're navigating kind of potential arrows constantly being pointed at you.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So,
yeah.
really anybody going into this arena, they've got to have a really open heart to know what's needed to be changed, but a really
Mm-hmm.
tough skin in
Yeah.
order to get on and do the job and not be affected by all the shenanigans.
Well, what we call it is, you have to have the fire in your belly.
Mm.
And what that means is you have to really want to do it. And you have to want to do it more than the other things that come with it that aren't so great, and
Yes,
you have to be willing to be, anything you do when you're in the public arena could potentially be on the front page of the newspaper.
right.
So, you want to be careful what you do and what you say, because, especially today, when it used to be you didn't have videos and cell phones,
Yes,
and anybody can video anything anywhere now. So you could be anywhere, and that could be on the radio the next day. So,
right. Or on the TV or splash across TMZ, yeah, or TMZ, whatever
mhm,
it's called. And
yeah.
that's the thing is we've become a society where we'll buy into the garbage. Like somebody says one word and they put it to a different picture and it changes its meaning. We'll buy into that and tear the
Mhm.
person to shreds before we'll
Right.
ask whether it's real or not. So, what does that say about society? That we're so eager to tear someone to shreds, just on the
Mhm.
base of something we've seen or heard. People have become what I call very much headliners, da 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 da. And instead of reading the content and the context of that content and really know what's
Right.
going on, they've bought into the headline. I have publicists that send me people and there'll be a headline and I go, do I really want to do that? But I'll take the time to read the bio and read everything else and go, there's nothing about this person that's got to do with that headline. They're just trying to sell me a bill of goods. And
Um,
I will actually tell the people I'm interviewing, do you know this is the way you're being presented?
oh my
And
gosh.
they don't. They don't.
Oh
Right?
no.
So,
I hope they didn't do that to
yeah, I take the time to look
me.
because I want to
Yeah.
know who am I'm interviewing. And but
Yeah.
they're appealing to the podcasters that are the conspiracy theorists and sensationalists. And I'm a
Yeah.
solutionist, not a sensationalist. We need change. We desperately need change in our human climate of the way we think, the way we see, the way we act, and the way we approach each other. That has to happen. Otherwise, we're just not going to survive. Um,
Yeah.
another 50, 100 years like this, absolutely not. And that means that when people are putting other people down, especially women, what
Yeah.
they're really saying is, I am insecure in myself
Oh
and
yeah.
I can't embrace who you are. So it's a reflection back on them, and that reflection needs to be uh, profiled in a way that they're seeing it for themselves. Because when somebody is really secure in who they are, they're going to celebrate your strength. They're going to
That's
celebrate your
true. And
abilities.
and and it's not about, one gender being better than
Right.
the other. It's about using all our strengths. And I tell people it's not about just voting for a
Played on
woman, because
sex.
a lot
Yeah.
of women are afraid. They'll say, well, I'm voting for Susie, but it's not because she's a woman. Like they have to
Yes.
apologize,
Yes. No,
you
you
know.
don't have to
And I'll just
explain. No, you're
I'm like,
boasting
no,
for
I
character.
mean, I'm just voting for the best person, and this happens to be a woman this
Yes,
time. And
exactly.
that's all anybody wants, a level playing field, vote for the best person. Many times it's a woman, not always. And but the other thing about the point you were making that we got to really worry about is that um people are easily misled sometimes also, but sometimes people just use it as an excuse to
Yeah.
believe what they want. But with Al coming on in the robotic age,
Mm,
they are going to be able to take anybody's image
I know.
and have them do anything. So then it gets to where, maybe you believe it, or maybe you don't believe anything. I don't
Yeah.
really know how
Yes.
we're going to
No.
navigate that. Yeah.
Exactly. And this makes it so much harder to back up. So, the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, if it's negative,
Mm-hmm.
then you've got to know who wants it to be negative.
Right.
Reverse it and find out who's behind it. All right.
Yeah.
Before you buy the story, good or bad, who is behind it and what's the agenda? And if you can
Yeah.
kind of reverse back to where it comes from, then you know what the agenda is. And I mean, it is absolutely true, folks, that we do have a massive Russian um, social media hacking going on, which bring,
Mhm.
talking negatively about governments, not just America or Canada, the
Mhm.
UK and very others, for their own agenda. They're stirring it up. They're stirring the
Yeah.
shoot up, folks. That's what they're there to do. They're there to put
Yeah.
doubt in people's mind. They're there to rally people up. Thing is, let us be rallied for something that is positive and solutional. But let's put the
Yeah.
pitchforks down, right?
Mhm.
Because we're not going to get anywhere with the pitchforks. And people say, why do I keep saying pitchforks? It's so archaic. Well, I mean, because it's AK-7s now,
Well,
And
what's hard, and this is a little bit like what you're talking about too, is you're talking about the infiltration
yeah,
by some other uh,
country.
countries or or entities or maybe even subversive elements
Yes,
who want to infiltrate. And part of the problem is that if you a, a whisper campaign, it's hard to
yes, snuff
counter it
out. Yes.
because, and I even have experience that in politics where, I'll be out campaigning and then somebody will say, well, they said, you're against this. And I'm
Mm,
like, no, I've never been against that. I've
yeah,
always been for that. And who said that? Well, no. And then how many people did they tell? And so
right,
then if you go do a press conference, you don't know if you're correcting it or bringing attention to it,
right. Yes.
again. So it's just, that stuff is really hard.
And
So
I think
the
kind of,
whisper.
as a politician, kind of responses, unless you see it coming from my mouth on the news or
Mhm.
personally, don't buy it. You know?
Yeah,
Because,
right.
again, it's buyer beware. And we've got to be
Yeah,
aware of what we're seeing. And we've got to, again, use some common sense, use some logics, which I feel that is kind of gone off somewhere, most people that, be rational about it. They talk about women being emotional and hysteria, but, what we're
Mhm.
seeing is a hell of a lot of hysteria out there on both sides, but a great deal of men being, the pitchfork picker-uppers. And it's women are more likely to shout and scream and spat about it. Men are more likely to take up arms. And very often they don't know
Well,
what they're taking up arms against. They're just mad and they're taking up arms.
I remember I don't know, this kind of reminds me of one time I was out campaigning in a grocery store parking lot on election day, and the radio was on in my car. And I heard this other politician go on there and say, "Well, Carol Chumney, she's against this," and it
Mhm.
was just totally untrue. My
Yes,
record was not that. I got on the phone and called him and basically had to threaten legal action, and he had to get on the radio and
and
retract it.
apologize.
But if I
Yes,
hadn't
good.
heard it, if I
Yeah.
hadn't heard it, all these thousands of people would have believed it.
Well, this
So,
is the problem in being a politician. As I said, you've got to have a warm heart because you're there working for the people. So you've got to care.
yeah.
But you've got to
Hmm.
have that thick skin and be able to, I kind of call it pull mama on them. What did you
Hmm.
say?
I
Now
know.
go to
Yeah.
your room, and it's that accountability. But you've got to do it in such a way where you are showing ownership of your own faculties, of your own person, and you're not putting
Yeah.
up with that balderdash, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Be
And
calm.
because it's
Yeah.
firm calmness, and that is
Hmm.
an art in itself. Because when you're firm calm, it doesn't matter what they're slinging at you. And
Yeah.
it's that tone of voice, is it? Now let's put this right. Because if you
Yeah.
show calm about it and you're going to talk to the facts about it, people are being put on notice and people that
Or if
listen
you're
are
wrong,
hearing you.
just say, "Hey, you know what? I hadn't thought about that. Maybe you're right. I'll think about it. Maybe I'm wrong."
Yeah.
You don't know. We're not always right, but I mean, at least you know the way and the method and the tone and the way people talk to each other is important.
Yes.
And that's civility and mutual and respect. We need that.
We should
Hmm.
lead the way. It should lead the way. You can
Hmm.
agree to disagree, but you
Yeah.
don't have to get downright nasty. And one of the things I really will say this is, about American politics that I can't stand. Whenever you have an election, I have to go to different channels. I look at the mudslinging, and they don't
Hmm.
care how down and dirty they get. And
Right.
they're doing, this forum, and all you're hearing, but this person did that and that person did this. It's like, I want to hear your policy. I want to hear what you're going to do. How are you
Hmm.
going to do it? Whom are you going to do it with? Put the
Yeah.
goddamn mud down. It isn't about,
Hmm.
who can throw the biggest amount of mud on each other. And we're
Right.
tired of that, I think, as people, we're tired of this balderdash going on. And it's
Hmm.
get your act together. Take the
Yeah.
higher road and show us what you're going to do that's achievable, not
Yeah.
just
That's true
promised up in
too.
the big cloud, achievable.
That's true too. That's so true. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't pay attention and to the very end if they vote, and then right at the very end they try to figure it out. But
Yeah.
sometimes, they don't have enough time at that point.
Right,
So
or it's like, oh, I better go for the devil I know than the devil I don't, or they abstain from voting altogether. And I kind of don't blame that because very often you look at the candidates, when running for
mm,
president, and it's like, who is that? I mean, I'm for Pete Buttigieg. I think I'd love to see him run. He just seems to be a
mm,
very rational, logical, get on with it.
mhm,
He's obviously been through a great deal of his own attacking, being a gay guy in politics or a gay guy in the
mhm,
army, but he seems to
mhm,
have a lot of rationale about him, and he's young enough to serve this next generation. And
mhm.
so, I'd like to see him put his hand in the arena, but it's so difficult. And what is absolutely an atrocity is how billionaires can come along and buy their position.
The money is so it's a substantial issue in
Yeah,
politics, and Um, because if you're running against somebody that has, $500,000 in the campaign and you only have 200,000,
yeah,
you can compete. But I mean, it's if you have a 500,000 too, it's a lot easier because they're going to be all over TV in a
yeah,
local election. They're going to be mailing everybody billboards, and people it's just like buying a product.
Yeah.
Like if you're buying which toothpaste, if you see the particular ad all the time on TV, you're much more likely to pick it up at the grocery store.
The
It's
subliminal
just the way
message
it
is
is.
there, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people go with authority. So if there's certain endorsements, or if somebody's wearing a uniform, or there are all kinds of ways that people persuade people, through that. And sometimes those people, they don't have the record to back up what's being said, but it's
Exactly.
never exposed. It's never
Right.
exposed.
No, because
Yeah.
they can hide it. They've got the money to hide it too and make things
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
away. You know, the other
Yeah.
thing I think is millennial, Gen X, all that, that generation. If you want to reach them, they're not watching TV, right? You got to appear
No,
on
they're
podcasts.
doing the podcast and everything.
Exactly. TED Talks or
Yeah.
live Facebook feeds, live Instagram feeds.
Uh-huh.
They also want to know, yes, you're a politician and you're capable of doing what you're doing, but are you a human? Because they
Yeah.
want to see some humanity about you. And I think anybody
That's
who's
important.
campaigning, campaign differently. Because
You
they,
do.
the others may appeal to the older generation who's watching TV and all of that, but what about the younger people
You do
who are
have to.
just, jaded about it? Speak to them directly. There's more of them as baby
Well, you
boomers
do.
are dying out.
They do. You do have to show, more than one side of yourself, and not just, this is what I'm going to do. This is
Yeah,
what I've done. This is what I'm going to do.
yeah,
But it also, you have to show, who you are. As a person. People want to see that. And if you're not able to show them that side, that's a problem. And
yeah,
and it's hard for women, I will say, with that, because as we've talked about, how you have to stay calm and how can't overreact. But then, and you want to look professional and you want to look like you're competent and you could do the job. But then you also, you need to show that other side, of yourself as
yes.
well, where, you're
Well, it's
with people and care
relatability.
about people.
I mean,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
talk about this all the time on business podcasts. Before
Hmm.
people are going to buy anything from you, they want to buy you. Do they buy
Yeah.
you? Do they find you authentic and relatable? Well, that's the same
Yeah.
thing. You are selling yourself to the public. That,
Right.
this is me as a
Hmm.
person, and this is what I would do, not what I would do and forget about who I am. They want to buy
Yes.
you, because if they feel you and they feel that
Right.
you're really authentic and they really feel that you are there, not just the blah, 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 but they
Right.
really see it, then they go, okay, what's she about? I want to know more. But first
And
they
this,
get, and especially the younger ones.
but the thing is, like, we go back to money,
Hmm.
because if you don't have the money to define yourself in politics, the other people will define you, and the press. And I do talk about the press and the media and their influence on, why, the big question, why we don't have more women in public office and in
Hmm.
higher office in particular. And we're going through the media lens, and
Mm.
so they will define you. And if you can't buy the ad, if you can't, and if there's a cultural bias, then you're going to be seen through their lens, and it may not be you.
No,
It may not
exactly.
be you.
No, and
Yeah.
this is why, taking control and doing things like podcasts where people are going to see the real you.
Hmm.
Why are you putting
Yeah.
up YouTubes? Why are you even doing TikToks? That is
TikTok.
that's it really is. You will have others in the political community making fun if you're doing a TikTok or doing something funny, but the people that were following it go, God, they're real. They're real,
my
right? They're not
my
robotic.
young millennial campaign helper, who I went out with him and put up a lot of yard signs last summer in 100 degrees, and he had me do a TikTok,
Yes,
one
yes.
TikTok, and
It
because
is
it was
where
important.
the things you
Yeah.
have to go where it's at, like
Yeah.
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I mean, of course, if you're hitting the professional people, you do LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the thing is you've got to go where people are. And more people are online now than they are on
Yeah.
cable, right? So
That's true.
it's reaching people where they're at. But the thing is, you are in charge of the narrative too, right? Now,
Yeah.
if you go and do an interview with CNN, it's their questions, and very often they're wanting to sell time. So they're going to bring up something sensational, or you're in the
Right.
midst of trying to say something that may
Yeah.
take another 30 seconds, but they cut you off. You don't get that on,
That'd be
you
really
know,
hard.
yeah, exactly. Where you
Yeah,
don't get this in these arenas, and then people have the chance to really listen to what you're about. So I think,
that's right.
anybody getting into this arena of politics today, there's the young Hispanic woman. What's her name? She became senator. I
Oh,
can't remember her name. It's skipped me at the present moment. If you know, folks, shout it out. Um,
okay.
yeah. She's a young Hispanic woman, and even she was surprised that she got the senator seat. But she
Uh-huh.
she got it because she's no nonsense. She got
Yeah.
it because she speaks exactly what needs to be done, and
Yeah.
she was under attack, and she stood up. Uh,
Yeah.
but without mudslinging back, just stood up and faced the giants, and that's what people want. They want people that are willing to stand up to the giants. And I
Some of
think,
them do, but some people want some people do, and then also some people want somebody who's gonna get the stuff done that they want, more in particular. Like so like if you have a lot of money, you might want somebody that's gonna keep the tax breaks.
yes,
But if you're more in the middle class or retired, then you want somebody who's going to help make sure that Medicare is
yes.
funded fully and Social Security. And then if you're, younger, you want to be able to buy a house and pay for college. So, a lot of that's, that factors into, I
Yeah, and
think.
it is us as what we're needing to see happen from a politician. And you can't be,
Yeah.
the licorice all sorts. You can't be everything. So there is generally,
Mhm.
two or three things that you stand for. That's what is going to get you up there. And it's how
Yeah.
broad a spectrum are they, and how able are you to deliver?
And
That is the
sometimes you're
thing.
just lucky you get the right race at the right time.
Yes.
I remember Ann Richards, who I met once, and she was after she got elected governor of Texas, and she just ran against a man who was just kind of rude to her.
Right.
Wouldn't shake her hand and stuff, and she got elected governor mostly because she was at the right race at the right time.
Yes.
And
And
whoever
took
you're
the higher
running
ground,
against,
right? It showed,
yeah, took the higher
again, as I
ground.
was saying, it showed him as less
Hmm.
than, because he couldn't
Yeah.
show respect to her. And that really has an effect on people. Now, the people that don't know anything about respect or value, they're going to vote for him. But for the people
Right.
who go, I'm tired of this. How dare you
Yeah.
disrespect her? I'm going to get behind her.
Yeah, I think it motivated people.
Yeah.
And those swing voters are so important
Yes.
because really most of the people, a lot of the people are in the middle, but they get they get defined by everybody on either side. So
Exactly.
they're like, trying to get, do I go over here this time to go over there? Who do I vote for? There's nobody for them, so they're just kind of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So mhm.
The problem is, a great deal of politics because of outside influence, corporate influence, lobbyists, money, outside money. Right? And I
Mhm.
think if we removed all of that, and the
Mhm.
filibuster, and removed all
Yeah,
of that, and just take things back to, you are elected to do a job. If you don't
right.
do your job because you haven't, not if somebody's tried to do their job and they've been up against the hurricane, but people who just got elected and then it's their own agenda,
Yeah.
that if you
Mhm.
can't produce in a period of time, out.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah.
And I think if this was run as a corporation, if politics was run as a corporation,
Mhm.
it would fail.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, because the stockholders or whatever, they're like, you're not making money for us, then
Right.
get
Exactly.
someone else. Yeah,
Exactly.
they don't wait. Yeah, they move on.
And
Yeah.
I think, by inserting more women in there with a voice that is respected and heard, and with less of the little boys club pat pat on the back, handshake and hand greasing, we would see more of that. I interviewed somebody recently here in Canada. They were manufacturers, and they would write the manual. And the government came along and said, "No, we've got to write the manual for you." And he said, we're the manufacturers. We're responsible for how this is used.
Mhm.
We will
Yeah.
write the manual. We've done this for the last 50 years. No, you've got to do it our way or pay us. Anyway, they took that particular part of the government to court, fighting them.
Yeah.
And they just pushed back, government pushed back, ended up losing the company. So then he decided to go in more into the expose of what really was going on, wrote a book on it. Every time the book was published in Canada, they would bring it down. And he had to
Yeah.
leave Canada and go and live in the States
Wow.
because they had an arrest out for his warrant because they wanted him to
Oh my
keep
God.
quiet. And he was saying it was the clerical workers that were running everything. Whether this gets
Uh-huh.
to the right person, what that does, grease my hand, that's not going to happen. And there was one judge that was on record as saying, you can bribe anyone as long as race isn't involved.
Oh no, they actually tape recorded
They
that or
did.
something. That's
And he stood
amazing.
by it. And it's like,
Oh
what?
wow.
What? And so,
Wow.
politics in any country is really up for review
Yeah.
and really needs to be shaken up and
Yeah.
really needs to have more common sense in that. And I think if it was top loaded with women, not women that were trying to be the male counterpart, but women that were stepped into themselves as women. And I'm not talking about
Yeah.
they're binary, lesbian, or anything. I'm talking about women race of like, this isn't about you putting on a man's suit as a
No. Yeah.
woman.
Just be yourself. Be
Be
yourself.
yourself,
Yeah.
bring that common sense, and also not about women being bitchy or competitive with each other, but doing what
Right.
you do at, your kids' bake sale, everybody baking and coming together and making sure there's a good sale,
Yeah.
and remembering what they're there for, and taking the insecurity and the ego and the opulence and entitlement out of it.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
we're not going to get anywhere until we do that. So I don't know how it's ever going to come about because
It does happen. It does happen, some because like I'm a judge now and I was elected last year. And I remember when I first started practicing law, there were hardly any female
Mm.
judges. And now I'm a circuit court judge and we have 9 elected circuit court judges in Shelby County, which is the Memphis metropolitan area. 8 of those are women now out of the
Great.
9.
Yes.
8. So we've made some gains in the
Yeah.
judiciary, but we haven't made as many gains in these higher, gubernatorial, mayor positions and president, and in America, and then in some other countries have done much better than
All right.
us.
Do you think
I
it's
will
an
say
age thing? Do you think as this next, that generation kind of dies out or retires, that, that when we start getting to the 50-year-olds, that we're going to see a change in there? That,
it might.
this is the
Yeah,
whole, old guard holding on to what they've got.
it might. It might. It might. Um, one thing I do talk about a little bit in the book, and in Memphis in particular, we grapple with still race a lot here in the
Mm,
city. This is where Dr. King unfortunately was killed. And so one thing I talk about is we're so busy grappling with that still, we never get to gender.
mhm.
And that's a piece of it, maybe too. So now we've elected an African American president. Um, and then we have an African American female as vice president,
Mm.
but she was elected because a man picked her. I mean,
Right.
I do have to say that because none of the women that ran won, but hopefully there's going to be some room, for women to move up more. I'm hoping. Tennessee is very behind,
Mm.
and where I live, it's amazing that we put women over the top by one vote,
Yeah.
in 1920, and we still have not elected women to many of these statewide
Right.
positions. So,
But
mhm.
look at how many corporations are run by women. Look at, in the school system, generally run by women. You look at
Yeah,
the dominance of women in places of responsibility and power. Now, not
right.
to say that egos and power-hungry women aren't out there. There are plenty,
Mhm. Oh,
but
sure.
you see generally women entering those arenas because they do want to make a difference, because they do want to resolve situations, and they
Right.
do want to set things in different motion. Um, and it isn't necessarily about the ego because they also know the persecution they're going to be under just for being a woman. So in order
Yeah.
to enter that world, there has to be a driving force to, I really, I know I'm up against, I know what I'm up against. There's going to be the mudslinging, the daggers, the
Kind of
this
good.
and
I
that,
didn't know.
but I'm
It's
going to
kind
do
of
it
good.
anyway.
It's kind of good. I didn't know what I was up against. It's
Exactly.
kind of kind of good in a way because, it was such a huge challenge. And now I look back and I'm like, my gosh, I did so well considering, coming in a close second. And then I wrote the book because I was like, how am I going to change this? I knew
Yes.
we had to change the culture. We had to change the media and presses, the way they wrote about women
Right.
running. And I felt like, well, this is a way I could change it, is to try to write this book. And what I say is that there's this glass ceiling, and the reason it's called a glass ceiling is because you can't see it. So what I say is you have to see it to defeat it. And so I tried to, in the book, be able to show it so that people can say, oh, there it is. Okay,
And
well,
it's
we want
only
to
made
change
out
that.
of glass. We can break this,
Right,
right?
we can break it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can break it. I'll never forget on election night, Hillary Clinton. And it reminded me so much when I lost the mayor's race and I, planned the big celebration and, was very thought, hey, we're going to win, didn't win. And here I was on this stage with trying to give a, not an acceptance speech,
Right. Mm-hmm.
a different kind of speech. And I remember when on her election night, and she had got I guess it's called the Javits Center with the big glass ceiling and the
Yeah.
convention hall. And I told somebody like the day or two before, I said, I don't think she should have picked that venue. And then there she was. And she wasn't there, actually. She didn't go because that glass ceiling was still there, and
I
so
mean,
it's hard.
the glass ceiling needs to be broken in many arenas. I'm a 70s chick. That's when I was an adult, and I was living in South Africa, and it's a very misogynistic world at that time. I don't know what it's like
Mm.
now, but that time, absolutely. And I would get fired for speaking out to what a customer needed and what's going wrong, but then they would turn around and hand me the job. And I said, no, I don't
Okay.
want the job. I just want the person who's my boss to do the job. And when I bring them a problem that needs to be resolved, to listen, right? I'm not wanting the job. I just want them to listen and do their job. But there was a lot of sexism, a lot of those you talked about
Um,
getting the condom. And I rejected somebody. And I said, I'm sorry,
mhm.
I have a boyfriend. Thank you very much. And he had it out for me the whole time I was there.
Oh, no.
And then he then took over my boss's position and found an
Oh,
excuse to
no.
fire me. And so I
Yeah.
did do a dirty bag. I had just signed, I just got an enormous contract for, it was Mobil Oil. And I called the person up and told them to stay with Shell. And when he found out which company it was, his jaw just dropped. Well, but it happened over and over again. And
Yeah.
and it was just like kind of got despondent after a while. One of the reasons I
Yeah.
left apartheid and misogyny, but because South Africa was a beautiful country. But it's like why are you
Yeah.
looking at me as a woman as a threat? I'm coming to
Yeah.
you with something I can see that clearly you can't see. And instead of
Yeah.
penalizing me for it, why do you go, oh, I'm glad you saw it from that point of view. I hadn't
Oh
seen it
no,
that way.
usually what happens is it's like they write about this, like you'll be in a meeting and you'll say, well, maybe we should do this, and then nobody says anything, and then the guy says, maybe we should do this. I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh,
that's a good
great
idea.
idea. Yes, exactly.
It was my
Exactly.
idea.
I know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like we take the high road. Oh, yes, very good, and you give them a
Yeah.
good stare in the eye. But, a lot of
Yeah.
those people, you could stare them in the eye and like, where's your conscience on this? And they haven't got one, they
Yeah.
just don't have
Some people
one.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people don't. Yeah. So
I think that most people, I mean, there's some people that go into politics because of power. Carte blanche, it's like who's going to pay them for what, and they're going to make money and this and that. But you've got most people that go into it because it is a hard arena. They go into it because they do want to make a difference. They do
yeah.
want to serve their people, just like people go into the military. They do it, some people do it maybe for the education or for the thrill of traveling around the world, but most people do it because they want to serve their country. And politics is the
Yeah.
same thing. But the battle that you're facing in the political arena may not have, guns and grenades, but it has the equivalent of, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I'll tell you, it is challenging, and but for all the women listening, and young girls and people who may think about politics. I mean, it's been the thrill of my life. I
Yeah.
mean, to be able, I didn't always succeed, but the things I got done, I'm so proud of. I feel
Yes.
so good about that. I was there, and it seemed like I would end up getting in a place where nobody would say anything. Kids were dying in daycare. Nobody wanted to do anything about it when I was at the legislature, because there were a lot of legislators in the daycare business and churches,
Mm.
and so it was very political. And I was like, I can't sit here where kids are dying. I got to do something. And then
Exactly. Exactly.
and it would just win and win and win.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are the kind of things that you never forget. I mean,
Right.
it's a thrill, and it's the challenge, and so that's, if you have that fire in your belly, don't let all the other stuff worry you, because you will make a difference.
And then read your book. Because you're laying the ground for them of the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs, and more forewarned you are, more aware you are of what
Mm-hmm.
you're up against, more prepared you are to face it.
That's right. And that's what a lot of people have said, that the book is really good for women or girls who are interested in politics, like might want to get into it wherever you live. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what country you're in,
Yeah.
because it just it shows the human nature side of politics too. And some things you always have to watch your back,
Yes.
So
And, anything of power, you have to watch your back, whether you're in
yeah.
corporate or anything else. When we talk about, schools and teachers fighting, we say, oh, it's all about politics. So when we talk about something that's being negative and in the way, we say, oh, it's just political.
Mhm.
People strutting their stuff. But we need to change what the political means. And we need to change it is the people standing up for the people of their country, of their constituents, of being there for making life better. And if we're
Yeah.
reminded of that, and if we're reminded, and we get more and more young people entering politics with that mindset, with that heart set. People say to me,
Hmm.
who do I interview? And I go, all those with a heart. Truly, a
Yeah.
heart, not the egocentric, all about me, I'm important, but the
Hmm.
people that are coming from the heart. Because if you're driven by the heart, you'll face
Hmm.
no matter ups and downs, because the heart is in it, right?
Yeah,
So,
you got to look at yourself. As we say, you got to look at
yeah,
yourself in the mirror the next
yeah,
day. You got to live with yourself. And when you maintain your integrity, which means your values and your actions and your words are consistent, and you maintain that integrity, then you'll never go wrong. And as I say, if you do that, you may catch hell in the short run, but
right.
it always works out in the long run. You will always feel better in the long run. So,
Exactly. And,
mhm,
so you've got to have persistence, you've got to have resilience, that
mhm.
tenacity, a certain amount of thick skin, but always kind
Yes.
of a compass, the heart and soul. Right? Heart and
Yeah.
soul is the compass. And, there's a lot of things wrongs everywhere. I've got a show coming up at the end of the month with a young woman who's a nutritionist, and I'd wonder where she was because I'd interviewed her a few years before. And her brother was dealing pot and in
Mhm.
Texas, and so they had a warrant out for him, and he disappeared. They couldn't find him, and because she was close to her brother, they arrested her. Right?
Oh no.
No court, just charged her, and she went to jail for 2 years. Never ever
Wow.
had any pot on her, nothing like that. And
Yeah.
and she spent 2 years in jail, and just she didn't have any rights. And it's like, couldn't find your brother, we're going to go for the next person in the family.
Ooh, man. Well,
So so when
where
you've
was she?
got that kind of in Texas, when you've got that kind of
Wow.
injustice going on, and that the
Yeah,
innocent don't have a voice, you can understand why people get upset. So,
that's true.
a reform is necessary across the board, and most certainly in the prison systems because they became privatized. And I've done
Yeah.
shows on this too, on that,
Yeah.
and where it's not really. A lot of people think if you've done the crime, you shouldn't have any rights, but it depends on what kind of crime, and there's a lot of people that have done little crimes and they're treated as big villains. And, when you look
Mm,
at Europe, they look to reforming the people, giving them an education, and preparing them to leave and be proactive
mm,
in society. We seem to
mm.
just chuck people out. Here's $30. Don't commit the crime again, and we throw them back into a world they don't know, right?
It's
And
hard.
And then we
It's
expect
hard
them
when you,
not to
yeah,
repeat. So
yeah,
we've got so many systems that are broken. And the more
yeah.
people that are willing to stand up in the political arena and say, let's stop turning a blind eye.
Oh,
Why have we got,
that's a great thing. Yeah.
right? Let's come together. This is my arena, that's your arena. It's all about humanity. It's all about our nation's people and how we can put things back into balance where the rights are where they should be and people are not considered guilty before proven innocent, which seems to be the
Oh,
way it's
wow.
gone, and that
Yeah.
people that are innocent can't be thrown into jail for somebody else's crime. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot that needs to change. And I think, quite honestly, a great deal of it, take any profit out of it, like prisons and this and that. If it's not a private enterprise that's making profit at how many people they can pack in together as sardines, right?
Mhm.
And that it is run in a more humane way and not for profit, we would see a difference. So there's a lot of things.
Well,
And we,
that's where you get back to those lobbyists again who,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
who get hired to go try to get, and I remember that in the Tennessee legislature
Hmm.
when I was serving, that there was one year a big bill, where a lot of lobbyists were,
Pushing.
being hired to get to privatize. And as I recall, it did not pass. But
Good. Where
anyway,
there's a lot of arenas are. And I think, men or women. And the other thing is gay or binary, it doesn't matter because, gay or binary are going to go through exactly what women have gone through, where they're going to be
yeah.
judged for their sexuality rather than the capability. Right. And
Well,
I
that's
think
the whole thing about if you have the American values in the workplace, really, it's just really should just be, can you do the job, and are you
exactly.
doing it? Are you doing it well,
And is
well
your
enough?
heart in it?
Yeah,
Is it there for the right
yeah.
reason?
Can you do the job? And
Yes,
that's really what the focus is, and that's why we have laws to protect against discrimination, because and women, of course, in America used to not be able to work and have certain jobs, and so we came a long way in terms of being able to hold certain positions and just qualify for things and go to college, and all kinds
yes.
of things that women used to not be able to do.
We've made a lot of strides, but there's still a lot more strides to have. And the more women that we see in the political arena, anywhere along the line, at any level, the more we're going to top that scale. And it's not about ousting the men out. It's about having men that recognize women's ability and
Yeah,
not looking at them as a sexuality or not looking at them as just a different species, but looking at
yeah,
them and what they're contributing and how can you work together.
that's right. Yeah, collaborate, because we
Mm,
have strengths. And
yes,
what the problem is, if you don't allow that, then you're losing at least half or more of your talent,
exactly.
because women are half or more of the population.
Yes.
So
And
yeah.
don't forget, men, you wouldn't be here without the women, and vice versa. But it's you know,
Takes two to
they
tango,
suffered a great deal
as
to
they
get
say.
you into the world, so respect, right? So for a young person right now, other than reading the book and kind of knowing what they're up against, what you've been up against, and also paying attention to the political arena, whatever state they're in, as to, what the policies are. I mean, you've got certain states like Florida pushing agendas, religious agendas, anti-abortion, books coming off the shelves, and all of those type of things. And again,
Mhm,
as I said, religion should be out of it. You should be neutral. That's your own personal
mhm,
choice of how you
mhm,
choose to worship, but it should not be imposed upon the nation. And I think
mhm.
that needs to come out of it. You could be a godly woman, but it isn't about you imposing your religion on someone else, right? It is about whether you're capable of doing the job. So for somebody who's wanting to enter the arena right now, other than reading the book and paying attention to what's going on, what would you say is kind of the first step of the first few steps that they should do?
If they want to get into politics, um, I helped other people. I mean, that's how I wanted to be in politics always as a little girl. And so when I was in college, I was volunteering for campaigns and,
Mhm.
uh, helping and meeting the candidates, meeting the people who help the candidates. I campaigned for people running for judge. I campaigned for a candidate for the U.S. Senate. I rode the bus overnight to Iowa for a candidate running for president. um, I knocked on doors in Iowa, and so to me that was the best way to get started. Because and then I joined groups. I got involved in a political party. I also joined civic groups. I think is always good, or neighborhood groups, because you're contributing something, but you're learning about leadership as you
Exactly.
do it.
Hmm.
And I think those are the most important things you could do to get started.
And what kind of degree is a good degree to have if you're entering the political arena? Political
Anything is
science,
good.
or lawyers, or what?
Anything's good. I don't think that there's limited at all, because we have all kinds of people who have served in politics and who've been presidents of the United States and other places, who've had all different kinds of backgrounds. I don't think there's anything that limits your background, whether you're going to be a farmer or engineer or a business person or a lawyer like me. But I gravitated towards law, and one reason is because law was something that you could step away from and go back to
Mm,
fairly easily. Whereas, if you're running a company or something,
yeah,
it's hard to not do that for a few years and then go back
right.
sometimes. But I think, the more experience you get, but I think do what you want to do, get what degree you want to get, but you can still contribute in politics, regardless of what it is.
And
So
you may just enter at the grassroots level and maybe then find something that, you've got a bug. Now you want to go further and further and further. But also don't underestimate the grassroots levels of just serving your community, right?
that's
Just
true. I mean,
being
it's
out there
you,
serving
you
your community.
you may not be the one that wants to be or put your name on the ballot, but
Right.
maybe you want to help somebody else. That's just as important. Nobody can do
Yes.
it by themselves,
No.
you know?
Now,
Yeah.
what is, as I said, the analogy of the orchestra. We're each an instrument that we need to learn how to play. And yes, we can play as a soloist and do very well. But when we come together as an orchestra, each in our own strengths, and decide to play harmoniously together, then we
Mhm.
really can create a symphony that can transform. So you've got to be able to play with others, but at the same time, be able to stand on your own and play on your own.
That's true. And, being a team, and, I did enjoy, I wasn't very good at it, but I played basketball in junior high and high school on the team. And I learned a lot from that. Being on a team is something, and you don't have to be the star player,
Yes,
but just
exactly.
just showing up and, playing with the team, you learn something,
There's always going to be
so
somebody that's good at putting the ball in the hoops. But
that's right.
you might be the person that gets them the ball to put it in the hoops. Now
That
you may not get the
sometimes
same
that's
accolades, but they
mhm.
know that they wouldn't have
Or
had the ball.
maybe you're on the bench like I was in high school, and you got to throw them the ball in practice, not at the game. But anyway,
Right. Right. So, I mean, there's all sorts of ways and things like this, but I think, one of the most important things is whether it's the political arena or there's a political arena in whatever job that you're doing, because we bring politics into everything. Is why are you doing it? Whom are you
Mhm.
here to serve? Does it really come from your heart? And what difference are you wanting to make?
Well, that's why, and I talk about this in the book, because when I lost an election, I remember
By
meeting this
7 seats,
woman.
folks, only by seven, only by
Yeah,
seven.
I remember talking to this woman, and she was an evangelist at Memphis, and she said, "Carol, remember, it's about your purpose, not the position."
Yes.
And basically, that helped inspire me to keep moving forward and
Mm.
not quit, because I thought, oh, yeah, she's right. It's really not about the position. There's so much you can do even without a position.
Exactly.
There's a
And
lot
also,
you
you've got
could
to
do.
remember if you're getting into certain positions, are you willing to take on the responsibility? Because it's a heavy
Yeah.
responsibility. And also, it generally comes with certain things that you'd rather not deal with, but that's part of the game. So, do you have the heart for it? Yes. But do you have the kind of the thick skin for it as well? Whether you can weather all
Yeah.
those little storms along the way. And it's and I think if you know your why, yeah, I want to do it because I
Right.
really want to make change in this. I really want
Yeah.
I really want to see that stop and this change. And that may be, your whole campaign of going through something. And then it could change and something else happens. But it's kind of that why, isn't it? Why are you doing it?
Right. And there's something else I think is important to say. And I'm not really critical of men or women in the book in particular in terms of why we don't have women in these positions. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody, but I will say that in some sense, it doesn't make sense that women are half the voters, but that we have so few women in these positions.
Yeah.
And it may be that not enough women are running, but it also may be that women that are still a little bit harder on ourselves than we should
Yes.
be. And we're kind of
Yes.
trained that way. And so I think we need to get out of that mindset and say, give ourselves permission to support
Mm.
women and support each other. So,
Yes. And don't hold each other to uh an old system. Women should be
mhm,
seen and not heard, or women can't cope with things like this. Just, look at a woman who is a wife. Right? She is mother,
yeah,
wife, she's head cook, bottle washer, she's nurse, she's counselor, she's sex goddess, she's economics holder, she's shopper, she's chauffeur, she's
yeah,
everything. And you look, people who have stayed at home raising their children and are going back into the workforce. Well, I'm just a housewife. Well, look at the multiple things you do as a housewife and how can they be
yeah.
transferred into something else? So,
And then a lot of times those people have supported somebody else
mhm,
who's succeeded very well and wouldn't have succeeded if it weren't for them. Because I
exactly.
mean, there are a lot of women working and taking care of kids or older parents, and then there are a lot of men who have that supportive spouse.
Yes.
Some women do too, but have that supported spouse, and they don't ever have to worry about cooking dinner or picking the kids
Yes.
up from school or whatever. But they're able to do so much, and so it's a team effort that got that, and we can't
Yeah.
forget that. you
No,
know
no.
yeah,
Be there for one another, folks. Be there for one another.
yeah.
So, whether you're wanting to be in the political arena or not, or you just want to understand politics a lot more, because hell, it's really hard to understand when you look at it and go, "Are they crazy?" You know, um,
Mm,
pick up Carol's book, and you can pick it up from
thank you.
Amazon, but also your site, carolchumney.com. So it's CarolChumney.com. And
Thank
you're
you.
also on Facebook, Arena One Women's Story, Twitter, Carol Chumney, Instagram, Carol Chumney, and you're also on YouTube as well. And this is perhaps a really good book for young girls that or men, it doesn't matter, but for I think men need to read it because to actually understand what they're up against and to make sure when they're entering the arena that they're not going to
Mm,
be part of the contributing to the problem. So this is a
yeah.
book for everybody, but I think it's, I'm always talking about, I like book clubs because people talk about the book, but I also talk about podcast clubs of listening to a podcast and then having a conversation and everybody's different perspective around it and really opening up your mind to hearing what other people see, not damning them, because why are they
Mhm.
seeing it from that point of view? Trying to understand why they're seeing it from that point of view, and then opening up to each other's perspective and having a decent conversation without the knives coming out. And, reading the book and discussing it because it doesn't matter whether it's a woman going into politics or a man, binary or anything else. It's an arena they need to understand, and you're preparing them for that arena, which whether they're going in low scale or going up full blast. I want to be
That's right.
president one day. How many girls do they say that? Well, they need to
Right.
understand the entire arena along the way. And so you've laid it out in your book, and I think that's a great start for people to read, man, woman, or child, or as a family. Especially if a family
Mhm.
is, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be this, I want to be that.
That's right.
Understand the arena you're
That's
going in,
right.
right? Because
Yeah, it'll save
you
you
got
some
to navigate
time
it.
and some
Yeah,
mistakes.
save you a lot of grief, right? And
Yes.
awareness and preparedness is going to see
Right.
you through so much more. And so if you're aware of what's going on, and then you can be prepared to how to recognize it when it's happening and what to do about it, is already half the battle. So it's really important. So, this is a good book to have as a conversation with your teens. They may not have thought about a political arena, but then after that, they kind of look at it and go, okay, I may not want to go to the top, but how can I serve my community? Because
That's right.
politics is everywhere. right? And if you know how
That's
to
true.
navigate through politics, then you're going to get that why of what changes you're wanting to make with a lot more ease because you know how to navigate through it. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it so much. It's just been wonderful, and I'm so impressed with your show and for the awareness you're bringing to
Oh,
everybody. It's
well,
wonderful.
that's what it's all about. It is about awareness. It is about the more we know, and the better we understand, and we can choose our interactiveness on a much better scale and be a part of the solution. You know, as I say, people are busy pointing fingers. Government's fault, this fault, that fault. There's three pointing back at us. What are we doing about it? Are we abstaining or have we stepped up? And I think that's important for us to actually, as a human race, to know we're all in this together. There's some people that have taken on more than you. How can we support them, or how can we hold people accountable, but especially ourselves?
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone out there. All right. Politics is all around us. It governs your life. The more you have an understanding of how it works, the more that perhaps you can put your voice in a different direction of support. And let's get more women out. We want to see a woman president. Okay. It's about time. It's about time. So let's get behind them and make sure that we give them that extra support they need because God damn it, we know they need it. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tab at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration, it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.